The survey ship Harmonious Discovery drifted silently through the outer reaches of what the locals called the Sol system. Senior xenobiologist Kethvar pressed his four-fingered hand against the observation window, watching the third planet rotate slowly before him. Blue and green swirled together beneath white clouds, creating patterns that reminded him of his homeworld's ancient art. Another water world, he muttered into his recording device. Preliminary scans show standard carbon-based life forms. Nothing remarkable detected. His assistant, a young Thraxian named Zix, looked up from her scanner array. Her 6 eyes blinked in sequence as she processed the incoming data. "Sir, I'm reading some unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface. The life forms appear to be active," Kethvar sighed. Every junior researcher thought they had discovered something groundbreaking. In his 400 years of surveying new worlds, he had seen it all. Gas giants with floating jellyfish, crystal planets with singing rocks, even worlds where the plants hunted the animals. This little blue marble looked completely ordinary. "Define active," he said, not bothering to look away from the planet. "Well, sir, there are structures everywhere, geometric patterns that suggest intelligence. And the electromagnetic spectrum is filled with organized signals, primitive but definitely artificial." Now Kethvar turned around. Intelligence was always worth investigating, even if it came from a backward species that had barely learned to use fire. "Show me." The main display flickered to life, showing a detailed scan of the planet's surface. Sure enough, geometric shapes dotted the continents. Roads, buildings, and what appeared to be cities spread across every landmass. Primitive spacecraft orbited the planet, and radio waves filled the local space with a constant chatter of voices, music, and data. "Interesting," Kethvar admitted. "They've achieved basic spaceflight and global communication. Add them to the standard contact protocol list. Estimated technological level?" Zix consulted her readings. "Early nuclear age, sir. They've split the atom but haven't mastered fusion. No faster-than-light capability detected. They're still using chemical rockets." "Typical development pattern," Kethvar noted. "File them under emerging intelligence. Monitor for FTL breakthrough. Now, let's complete the biological survey. Any apex predators we need to warn future colonists about?" This was the important part. The Galactic Federation had learned the hard way that every planet seemed peaceful until someone tried to land on it. Kethvar had lost 3 survey teams to various nightmares over the centuries. Giant acid-spitting worms, telepathic carnivorous plants, swarms of metal-eating insects that could strip a ship to its hull in minutes. The galaxy was full of unpleasant surprises. Zix ran the automated biological analysis, cross-referencing the planet's life forms against the Federation's database of known threats. The system would flag anything that met the criteria for planetary hazard, apex predator, or colonization risk. "Scanning complete, sir," she announced after several minutes. "No matches found in the threat database." Kethvar raised one of his eyebrows. "None at all?" "Run it again. Every planet has something dangerous." The scanner hummed for another few minutes, probing deeper into the planet's biosphere. Marine life, land animals, aerial creatures, microscopic organisms. Everything was cataloged, analyzed, and compared against thousands of years of Federation experience. "Still no matches, sir. The largest predators appear to be some kind of striped cat and a few species of bear-like creatures. The planet seems remarkably safe. Bears." Kethvar had encountered bear analogs before. Usually they were either completely harmless omnivores or absolutely terrifying killing machines with no middle ground. "What's their threat rating?" "Minimal, sir. They're primarily plant eaters. They'll defend themselves if cornered, but they actively avoid the intelligent species. Most of the planet's large predators do, actually. That was unusual. Most apex predators on worlds with intelligent life saw the locals as either prey or competition. The fact that this planet's dangerous animals avoided the intelligent species suggested that the locals had managed to establish dominance over their environment very early in their development. "What about the intelligent species themselves?" Kethvar asked. "Are they the apex predators?" Zix consulted her scanners again. "Negative, sir. They're quite small, actually. Average height around 1.7 meters. Relatively weak physical structure. No natural weapons. They appear to have succeeded through tool use and social cooperation rather than physical dominance." Kethvar nodded. It was a common enough evolutionary path. Intelligence trumped claws and fangs every time, given enough generations. "Any diseases we need to worry about?" Toxic atmosphere? Hostile plant life? Nothing significant, sir. The atmosphere is actually quite pleasant. Oxygen and nitrogen, similar to Thraxian norms. The plant life appears to be entirely non-aggressive. Even their microorganisms seem unusually benign. Benign microorganisms? That was almost unheard of. Most planets tried to kill visitors through either massive predators or microscopic invaders, sometimes both. Are you certain the scanners are working correctly? Zix ran a full diagnostic on her equipment. Everything checked out perfectly. The readings are accurate, sir. This planet appears to be remarkably safe for carbon-based life forms. I've never seen anything like it. Kethavar stared at the planet again, watching the white clouds drift across the blue oceans. In all his years of planetary survey work, he had never encountered a world that seemed so harmless. There was always something, always a catch. A hidden danger that would reveal itself only after colonists had established themselves and let their guard down. File the report, he said finally. Classification safe for colonization. No significant fauna detected. Recommend standard quarantine protocols until the local species achieves FTL capability, then standard contact procedures. Yes, sir, Zix said, inputting the data into the Federation database.
Should I flag anything for follow-up study?
Kethavar considered this. The planet was certainly unusual in its apparent harmlessness, but unusual didn't necessarily mean important. The Federation surveyed hundreds of worlds every cycle. They couldn't investigate every minor anomaly. Note the unusual absence of threats for the xenobiology department, he said. They might want to study how a planet can support intelligent life without producing significant predators. But mark it as low priority. As the harmonious discovery prepared to leave the Sol system, Kethavar took one last look at the blue marble that had proven so surprisingly peaceful. The local intelligent species, the scanners had identified them as humans based on their radio transmissions, continued their daily lives, completely unaware that they had just been cataloged, classified, and filed away by a galactic civilization beyond their current comprehension. The survey ship's engines hummed to life, bending space around them as they prepared for the jump to FTL. In a few moments they would be light years away, leaving the Sol system and its remarkably safe third planet behind. In the Federation database, Earth received its official classification. Minor species quarantine unnecessary. No biological threats detected. It would be 3 cycles before anyone realized how catastrophically wrong that assessment had been. As the harmonious discovery vanished into hyperspace, the humans below continued their lives, raising their children, building their cities, and slowly, inevitably, developing the technology that would eventually carry them to the stars. None of them knew they had just been dismissed as harmless. The galaxy would learn better soon enough. 3 cycles had passed since the survey of the Sol system, and Kethavar had almost forgotten about the remarkably peaceful little world and its harmless inhabitants. He was reviewing applications for membership in the Galactic Federation when his assistant Zix burst into his office, her 6 eyes wide with excitement. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, activating the main display. "Remember that world we surveyed in the Sol system? The one with no threats?" Kethavar looked up from his paperwork. "The peaceful water world? What about it?" "They've achieved faster-than-light travel." That got Kethavar's attention. Most species took several more cycles to develop FTL after reaching nuclear capability. The humans had done it in record time. "Show me their drive signature." The display filled with technical readouts that made Kethavar's brain hurt. The human FTL system was crude, inefficient, and according to every known law of physics should not have worked at all. It violated at least 3 fundamental principles of space-time manipulation, and seemed to function through sheer stubborn refusal to acknowledge that it was impossible. "This is madness," Kethavar muttered, studying the readings. "They're literally punching holes through reality and hoping for the best. The power requirements alone should have destroyed their ship." "That's what I thought too, sir," Zix said. "But somehow it works. Our long-range sensors detected them making successful jumps throughout their local stellar neighborhood. They've even established contact with the Alterian trading post on the edge of Federation space." Kethavar leaned back in his chair. The Alterian trading post was a rough place, frequented by pirates, smugglers, and various other unsavory types. Most new species needed heavy Federation escort to safely visit such locations. How did they manage that without getting themselves killed? According to the Altarians, the humans were enthusiastic. They showed up in a ship that looked like it was built in someone's garage, introduced themselves as representatives of Earth, and immediately started asking about joining the Federation. When some Corellian pirates tried to shake them down for protection money, the humans apparently laughed and invited them for drinks. They laughed at Corellian pirates. Kethvar had seen Corellians in action. They were 2-meter-tall reptilians with acid for blood and a well-deserved reputation for violence. What happened? The pirates ended up buying the humans several rounds and swapping war stories all night. Apparently the humans have something called military history that the Corellians found fascinating. By morning, the pirates were asking the humans for tactical advice. Kethvar stared at the display, trying to process this information. In his experience, first contact with aggressive species usually resulted in either immediate conflict or terrified retreat. He had never heard of anyone making friends with Corellian pirates over drinks. Send them an invitation to Federation headquarters, he decided. Standard new member protocol. Let's see what these humans are really like. 2 weeks later, the human delegation arrived at Federation Central in a ship that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts by someone with only a theoretical understanding of engineering. Despite its appearance, the vessel's FTL signature was strong and stable. Kethvar met them at the docking bay, curious to finally see these unusual beings in person. The human delegation consisted of 5 individuals, all remarkably similar to each other despite coming from different regions of their planet. They were indeed small, as his scans had indicated, but they moved with a confident energy that suggested they were comfortable in unfamiliar environments. Their leader introduced herself as Admiral Sarah Chen. She was a middle-aged female with graying hair and laugh lines around her eyes. "Thank you for inviting us," she said in perfectly accented Galactic standard. "We're honored to be here." "How did you learn our language so quickly?" Kethvar asked. Most species required months of intensive study to master Galactic standard. "We're fast learners," Chen replied with a smile. "Plus, we've been monitoring your communications for the past year. Amazing what you can pick up when you really apply yourself." During the formal presentation to the Federation Council, the humans displayed the same cheerful confidence that had apparently charmed the Corellian pirates. They talked about their planet's history, their technological development, and their hopes for peaceful cooperation with galactic civilization. "We understand we're newcomers here," Admiral Chen said to the assembled delegates. "We know we have a lot to learn, but we're eager to contribute however we can." Council President Vortak, a dignified Centaurian with blue skin and elaborate ceremonial horns, reviewed the human's application. "Your species shows remarkable adaptability," he said. "However, your homeworld is classified as having no significant biological threats. This raises some concerns about your ability to handle the more dangerous aspects of galactic civilization." "Dangerous aspects?" asked Dr. James Martinez, the expedition's science officer. He was a younger human with an infectious enthusiasm for new discoveries. "What kind of dangers are we talking about?" "Hostile environments, primarily," Vortak explained. "Many of our member species require extensive life support when visiting other worlds. Some planets are so dangerous that even our most advanced technology cannot guarantee survival. Your peaceful homeworld may not have prepared you for such challenges." The humans exchanged glances that Kethvar couldn't quite interpret. Admiral Chen spoke for the group. "Mr. President, with respect, I think there might be some misunderstanding about Earth's environment. Could we perhaps discuss specific examples?" Vortak activated a holographic display showing various Federation worlds. For instance, Kepler 442b. The atmosphere is 60% methane, the surface temperature averages -40 degrees Celsius, and the local wildlife includes pack hunters with neurotoxic venom. "We've lost 3 colonies there." "That sounds like a pleasant autumn day in northern Canada," Dr. Martinez said, making notes on his data pad. "The methane might be tricky, but nothing we couldn't handle with basic atmospheric processors." Vortak blinked his large eyes slowly. "I'm sorry, did you say pleasant?" "Well, maybe not pleasant," Martinez admitted, "but definitely manageable. We have people who live in environments like that back home." "What about the venomous pack hunters?" "They hunt in coordinated groups of up to 50 individuals, using sophisticated tactical communication," Vortak explained. "They're roughly the size of your Earth wolves, but faster and more intelligent." So like wolves but organized, said Colonel Sarah Williams, the expedition's military advisor. Have you tried negotiating with them? Pack hunters usually have complex social structures. There might be room for diplomatic solutions. The Federation Council sat in stunned silence. Kethavar felt a growing sense of unease as he watched the humans casually discuss problems that had stymied galactic civilization for decades. Perhaps a more extreme example, Vortak said, bringing up another world. Proxima Centauri C surface radiation levels that would kill most species in minutes. Gravity 3 times galactic standard. Seismic activity that regularly reshapes the continental structure. High radiation, heavy gravity earthquakes, summarized Admiral Chen. Challenging, but not impossible. We've got people working in similar conditions right now on Earth. Mining operations, research stations, that sort of thing. The radiation would require some creative shielding solutions, but we've been dealing with that problem since we split the atom. You live in environments like this? Vortak asked incredulously. We live everywhere, Dr. Martinez said with obvious pride. Polar ice caps, underground caves, the middle of deserts, volcanic regions, ocean trenches. If there's a place on Earth, somebody has figured out how to survive there. Usually without much more than basic tools and determination. Kethavar found himself remembering his survey of Earth. The scanners had shown a world without significant threats, populated by small, physically weak beings. But as he listened to the humans casually discuss surviving in environments that terrified hardened space explorers, he began to wonder if his scanners had missed something important. The formal session continued for several hours, with the Federation Council presenting increasingly extreme scenarios, and the humans responding with either practical solutions or genuine enthusiasm for the challenge. By the end of the day, Vortak looked somewhat dazed. "We will review your application," he announced. "In the meantime, you are welcome to establish a cultural exchange program with any member species willing to host you." Admiral Chen smiled. "Actually, we were hoping to start some colony expeditions. We noticed several worlds in your database marked as uninhabitable or extreme hazard. Would it be possible to get surveying rights to some of those?" The council chamber fell completely silent. "You want to colonize death worlds?" Vortak asked faintly. "Well, they're not being used for anything else," Chen pointed out reasonably. "Seems wasteful to leave them empty." Kethavar stared at the human delegation, finally beginning to understand what his scanners had missed. Earth hadn't failed to produce monsters. Earth had produced something far more terrifying, a species that considered monster worlds to be real estate opportunities. 6 months after the humans received Provisional Federation membership, the reports started coming in. At first they were scattered and seemingly unrelated. Minor notices buried in the vast bureaucracy of galactic administration. Kethavar might never have noticed them if he hadn't been specifically monitoring human activities out of professional curiosity. The first report came from the Kepler 442b monitoring station. 3 lines in a routine weekly update. Human colony ship arrived. He established preliminary settlement. No requests for emergency evacuation received. Kethavar read it twice, certain there had been a translation error. Kepler 442b was the methane-rich world that had killed 3 previous colony attempts. The neurotoxic pack hunters alone should have wiped out any surface settlement within days. He sent a priority query to the monitoring station. The response arrived 3 days later with enough detail to make him question his own sanity. The humans had indeed established a colony on Kepler 442b. More than that, they were thriving. The initial settlement of 500 colonists had expanded to over 2,000 in just 6 months. They had built atmospheric processors to create breathable air pockets, established agricultural domes, and somehow negotiated a peace treaty with the local pack hunters. "Peace treaty?" Kethavar muttered, reading the report for the 4th time. "How do you negotiate with animals?" Zix looked up from her workstation. "Sir, you might want to see this. I've been tracking human activities across the sector, and the reports are unusual." She activated the main display, showing a map of Federation space with human activities highlighted in red. There were dozens of markers, spread across worlds that most species wouldn't visit without full hazmat suits and military escort. "Proxima Centauri C reports a successful mining operation," Zix said, pointing to one marker. "They're extracting rare minerals from the high radiation zones using what they call hard hat protocols, whatever those are. The local seismic activity has actually helped their excavation efforts. That's impossible, Kethvar said. The radiation levels would cook them in their suits. That's what I thought. But the mining reports show steady output and zero casualties. They've even started exporting refined materials to other Federation worlds. Kethvar studied the display, feeling increasingly unsettled. What else? Vega 7 reports that the human agricultural team has successfully domesticated the local acid-spitting plants. They're using them for soil treatment and pest control. The plant specialists there are calling it revolutionary agricultural technique. Acid-spitting plants, Kethvar repeated slowly. The same plants that dissolved the last 3 research teams? The very same. Apparently the humans figured out that the plants were just territorial and defensive. Once they established proper communication protocols and boundary agreements, the plants became quite cooperative. The reports kept coming. Humans had established successful colonies on lava worlds by building cities in the cooler zones and using geothermal energy for power. They had tamed the crystal spiders of Rigel Prime by offering them shinier minerals in exchange for silk production. On Wolf 359C, they had turned the carnivorous forest into a sustainable lumber operation by convincing the trees that regular pruning would help them grow stronger. Sir, Zik said quietly, there's something else. The Threat Assessment Division wants to speak with you. The Threat Assessment Division was responsible for monitoring potential dangers to Federation security. Kethvar had never been summoned by them before. He made his way to their offices in the secure section of Federation headquarters, wondering what kind of threat assessment could possibly involve his peaceful humans. Director Karleth was a Vorthan, a species known for their analytical minds and complete lack of humor. She gestured for Kethvar to sit across from her desk, which was covered with data tablets and holographic displays. Xenobiologist Kethvar, she said without preamble. You were responsible for the initial survey of the Sol system, correct? Yes, Director. Is there a problem with my report? Karleth activated a holographic display showing dozens of human colonies scattered across previously uninhabitable worlds. These humans of yours are presenting some unusual challenges for our risk assessment protocols. Challenges? They're succeeding in environments where failure should be guaranteed. More concerning, they're succeeding in ways that suggest capabilities we didn't detect in your original survey. Kethvar studied the display. I conducted a thorough biological analysis. The humans showed no unusual physical adaptations. They're actually quite fragile compared to most Federation species. Physical adaptations, yes. But what about behavioral adaptations? Karleth highlighted several data points. These creatures have an unusual relationship with danger. Instead of avoiding threats, they analyze them, adapt to them, and ultimately integrate them into their operations. Integration? On Tau Ceti F, the humans encountered hive mind parasites that had killed every previous expedition. Standard protocol would be immediate evacuation and planetary quarantine. Instead, the humans studied the parasites, learned their communication methods, and established a symbiotic relationship. They're now using the parasites for enhanced coordination in dangerous mining operations. Kethvar felt a chill run down his spine. Symbiotic relationship with hive mind parasites? The colonists report improved reaction times, enhanced problem-solving abilities, and perfect team coordination. The parasites report, quote, finally finding hosts that don't panic and ruin everything, end quote. The parasites report? The humans taught them Federation standard. Apparently they're quite intelligent and were just frustrated by previous hosts dying before proper communication could be established. Karleth brought up more data. On Ross 128b, they've domesticated what we classified as planet-killer storm beasts. Creatures the size of buildings that generate lightning and tornado force winds. The humans are using them for weather management and electrical power generation. How is that possible? According to the colony reports, they approached the beast during mating season and offered to help build better nests. The storms, it turns out, were just mating displays. Once the humans provided proper architectural support, the beasts calmed down considerably and became quite protective of their human neighbors. Kethvar stared at the data, trying to process what he was hearing. Every instinct told him this was impossible, but the reports were coming from reliable Federation monitoring stations. Director, what exactly are you suggesting? Karleth deactivated the display and leaned back in her chair. I'm suggesting that your original classification of Earth as no significant threats may have been incomplete. These humans aren't avoiding their planet's dangers, they're the product of those dangers. But your scans showed apex predators that avoided the intelligent species. What if they avoided them because the intelligent species had already established dominance? What if Earth's entire ecosystem learned to coexist with humans because the alternative was extinction? The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. You think humans are the apex predators? I think humans are something worse than apex predators. Apex predators kill their prey. Humans domesticate their prey, turn them into allies, and then expand into new territories with their former enemies as partners. Karleth activated one final display, showing human expansion patterns across Federation space. In 6 months, they've successfully colonized 47 worlds that we classified as uninhabitable. They've domesticated or befriended every dangerous species they've encountered. They've turned environmental hazards into industrial advantages. And they're accelerating, she continued. Each successful colony provides knowledge and resources for the next one. They're not just surviving in impossible environments. They're making those environments better and then teaching other species how to survive there, too. Kethvar looked at the expansion pattern and felt a growing sense of unease. What's our assessment? Unknown, Karleth admitted. They're not behaving like any threat we've cataloged before. They're not conquerors. They genuinely seem interested in cooperation and mutual benefit, but their capabilities suggest they could be the most dangerous species we've ever encountered, and they don't seem to realize it. What do you recommend? Continued monitoring, and perhaps closer study of their homeworld. I suspect your original survey missed some important details about what kind of planet produces creatures like this. As Kethvar left the Threat Assessment Division offices, he found himself thinking about Earth again, a peaceful blue and green world with no significant threats. But if Director Karleth was right, perhaps the reason Earth had no significant threats was that its inhabitants had long ago become the most significant threat of all. The humans continued their expansion across the galaxy, turning death worlds into gardens and monsters into partners, and somehow they still thought of themselves as the harmless species from a peaceful little planet. The galaxy was beginning to suspect otherwise. Kethvar stood before the massive quantum processors that housed the Federation's biological database, watching as terabytes of data flowed across holographic displays. Director Karleth had given him unlimited access to conduct a complete reanalysis of Earth's biological profile, and what he was discovering made him question everything he thought he knew about planetary survey work. Computer, display the original Earth survey data alongside current human behavioral analysis, he commanded. The display split, showing his original scans on the left and 6 months of human activity reports on the right. The contrast was jarring. His surveys showed a peaceful world with non-aggressive fauna and a weak intelligent species. The activity reports showed humans taming nightmare creatures and thriving in environments that killed seasoned space explorers. Zix approached with a steaming cup of Alterian coffee, a habit the humans had introduced that was rapidly spreading through Federation space. Sir, I've been running comparisons with other surveyed worlds. Something strange is happening. Define strange. Earth's biodiversity is off the charts, she said, activating a secondary display. Most planets with intelligent life show reduced species variety. The dominant species typically drives competitors to extinction. But Earth has millions of documented species all coexisting in the same ecosystem. Kethvar studied the numbers. That should be impossible. Intelligent species always dominate their environment. That's what I thought. But look at this. Earth's historical data shows repeated mass extinction events, followed by rapid evolutionary recovery and diversification. It's like the planet keeps hitting the reset button and then rapidly evolving new ways to survive. Mass extinctions, 5 major ones in the geological record, plus dozens of smaller events. Asteroid impacts, supervolcanic eruptions, ice ages, atmospheric composition changes. Each time, most life dies out and then something new evolves to fill the empty niches. Kethvar pulled up the detailed analysis. Earth's evolutionary history read like a catalog of planetary disasters. Asteroid impacts that should have sterilized the surface. Volcanic events that poisoned the atmosphere. Climate changes that turned the planet into either a snowball or a furnace. And yet life not only survived but became more complex and adaptable with each crisis. Computer, he said slowly, analyze the correlation between Earth's disaster frequency and the adaptability of its current dominant species. The quantum processors hummed for several minutes, cross-referencing millions of data points. When the analysis completed, HFY stared at the results in growing horror. Zix, look at this. The frequency and severity of extinction events on Earth is 10 times higher than the galactic average. Most planets this unstable never develop complex life at all. So how did humans evolve? Zix asked. They didn't just evolve, HFY said, his voice barely above a whisper. They evolved on a planet that was constantly trying to kill everything on it. Every generation faced new challenges. Adapt or die over and over again for millions of years. He pulled up the human evolutionary timeline. The story it told was one of endless adaptation. Climate change drove them from the trees to the ground. Ice ages forced them to develop fire and clothing. Predators taught them to work in groups and craft weapons. Diseases selected for immune systems that could handle almost anything. Computer, analyze human physiological adaptations and compare to other Federation species. The results made him sit down heavily in his chair. Humans weren't just adapted to their environment. They were adapted to survive environmental change itself. Their immune systems could handle pathogens from across the galaxy. Their digestive systems could process almost any organic matter. Their brains could rapidly learn new patterns and develop solutions to novel problems. They're not just intelligent, he breathed. They're professionally intelligent. Their entire evolutionary history selected for the ability to figure out how to survive anything. Zix was reading over his shoulder. Sir, look at this social behavior analysis. Human cooperation patterns don't match any known species model. The data showed that humans formed complex social bonds not just within their own species, but with other species as well. Dogs, cats, horses, even plants. Humans had a documented history of domesticating and befriending other life forms. More disturbing, they showed the same behavior with each other, forming alliances across tribal, cultural, and genetic boundaries when faced with external threats. They don't just adapt to their environment, Zix said in wonder. They adapt their environment to them, and they bring everything along for the ride. HFY activated the emergency protocols, sending his findings directly to the Federation database for immediate reclassification. The quantum processors began analyzing the full scope of human capabilities, integrating everything they had learned over the past months. Alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Computer, report status, HFY commanded. Warning, biological classification error detected. Species Homo sapiens requires immediate reclassification. What classification does the system recommend? Analyzing. Warning, species exceeds parameters for standard threat classifications. Director Carleth's voice came over the communication system. HFY, what have you done? Every threat assessment system in the Federation is going critical. I ran a complete reanalysis of human capabilities, he replied. The computer is having trouble classifying them. What kind of trouble? The main display flickered and then displayed a message that made everyone in the facility go silent. Classification complete. Species designation, Homo sapiens, threat level, planetary. Warning, entire planetary ecosystem constitutes single apex predator entity. Recommend immediate review of contact protocols. Carleth appeared in person minutes later, her usually composed demeanor showing cracks of genuine alarm. Explain this to me, she demanded. HFY gestured to the displays around them. Earth isn't a planet that failed to produce apex predators. Earth is a planet that turned everything into an apex predator, including its dominant species. The reason our surveys didn't detect threats is that Earth evolved past the concept of individual threatening species. What do you mean? Every species on Earth has been through the same survival gauntlet as the humans. They've all been forced to adapt, cooperate, or die. The entire biosphere functions as a single, integrated survival system. When humans encountered other dangerous species, they didn't fight them. They recruited them. Carleth studied the data. You're saying Earth is a planet-sized monster? I'm saying Earth is a planet that specializes in producing survivors. And when those survivors leave their world, they bring their adaptation strategies with them. The implications were staggering. Humans weren't just colonizing death worlds. They were turning death worlds into Earth-like ecosystems. They were spreading their planet's survival philosophy across the galaxy, one impossible colony at a time. Computer, Carleth said. Project human expansion patterns based on current behavioral data. The display showed a simulation of human growth across Federation space. Starting from their original 47 colonies, the projection showed steady expansion into every environment the Federation had deemed uninhabitable. Within 50 years, the simulation predicted human presence on thousands of worlds, each one transformed from a death trap into a thriving ecosystem. They're not invading, Kethvar realized. They're gardening. They're turning the entire galaxy into a giant version of Earth, and they probably don't even realize they're doing it, Karleth added. To them, this is just normal behavior. Find a dangerous place, figure out how to survive there, make friends with the local monsters, and build a sustainable community. The computer's voice interrupted their discussion. Additional warning. Human expansion rate accelerating. Each successful colony provides knowledge base for subsequent colonies. Projection indicates exponential growth pattern. Kethvar stared at the expansion projection, finally understanding the true scope of what they were dealing with. We haven't made contact with a new species, he said quietly. We've made contact with a force of nature. Karleth nodded grimly. The question now is whether that force of nature is going to help us or replace us. Based on human behavior patterns, the computer announced, probability of aggressive replacement 0%. Probability of involuntary integration 97%. Involuntary integration? Humans appear compelled to improve survival conditions for all species in their vicinity. Resistance to such improvements has not been observed in any contacted species. Kethvar laughed despite himself. It was either that or panic. So we're going to be rescued whether we want to be or not. That appears to be the situation, sir. As alarms continued to sound throughout the facility, Kethvar found himself thinking about those early reports from human colonies. Successful mining operations on radiation worlds, peace treaties with pack hunters, domesticated storm beasts. Each one had seemed impossible at the time. Now he understood. They weren't impossible. They were just human. The emergency session of the Federation Council was unlike anything in the organization's 1,000-year history. Representatives from every member species had gathered in the Great Assembly Hall, their various breathing apparatus, environmental suits, and translation devices creating a cacophony of mechanical sounds beneath the urgent murmur of 100 different languages. Kethvar sat in the expert witness section, watching as Council President Vortak called for order. The Centaurian's usually dignified blue skin had taken on a grayish tinge, and his ceremonial horns seemed to droop with the weight of the situation. Fellow sentients, Vortak began, his voice carrying through the universal translators. We are gathered to address the classification, update for species Homo sapiens, and determine our response to what the database has termed a planetary-scale apex predator entity. Ripple of nervous energy passed through the assembly. In the 6 months since the database reclassification, panic had spread through Federation space faster than human colonies. Some species were demanding immediate military action. Others were calling for complete isolation. A few radical groups were suggesting that humanity be studied and potentially weaponized. I yield the floor to Director Karleth of the Threat Assessment Division, Vortak announced. Karleth approached the central podium, her Vorthon analytical composure intact despite the circumstances. Honored delegates, after extensive analysis, we must confront an unprecedented situation. Humanity represents a threat unlike any we have cataloged, not because of their aggressive nature, but because of their adaptive nature. She activated the chamber's holographic displays, showing the now familiar pattern of human expansion across previously uninhabitable worlds. In the 8 months since their Federation membership, humans have established successful colonies on 73 worlds classified as uninhabitable, extreme hazard, or death world. Their success rate is 100%. Delegate Vrextai of the Rigelian hegemony spoke first, his insectoid mandibles clicking with agitation. Director, what is the military assessment? Can they be contained? That's the wrong question, Karleth replied. Human military capabilities are formidable but not exceptional. The real concern is their civilian capabilities. Every human colonist is essentially a biological terraforming unit. They don't conquer worlds. They make worlds conquerable for everyone else. Explain, demanded Counselor Threndok, whose crystalline form shimmered with stress patterns. Karleth highlighted several colony reports. Kepler 442b was a methane-rich death world. Human colonists established atmospheric processors, negotiated peace with the neurotoxic pack hunters, and created breathable zones. The world is now being considered for General Federation colonization. Proxima Centauri C was a high-radiation nightmare. Humans developed new shielding techniques and mining protocols. 3 other species have since requested permission to establish research stations there. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They're not taking these worlds from us, Karleth continued. They're making these worlds available to us. Delegate Yilhara of the Tau Cedian Collective raised her sensor cluster. What about the reports of humans forming symbiotic relationships with parasitic hive minds? That suggests potential for biological contamination of our population. The parasites in question are now serving as enhanced communication systems for joint human-Cedian mining operations on Tau Ceti. Karleth replied. The hive minds report being delighted to finally find hosts who listen properly. Both species have benefited from the arrangement. Cathvar watched the delegates struggle with concepts that challenged everything they thought they knew about interspecies relations. The fundamental assumption of galactic politics was that resources were limited and species competed for survival. Humans seemed to operate on the principle that resources could be created, and survival was a collaborative effort. Admiral Zekthara, the military representative, stood to address the chamber. With respect to the director's analysis, we must consider the long-term strategic implications. If humans continue expanding at their current rate, they will have a presence on every habitable and formerly uninhabitable world in Federation space within 50 years. Is that a problem? Asked a voice from the back of the chamber. Every head turned to see Admiral Sarah Chen entering the assembly hall, followed by the rest of the human delegation. They had not been officially invited to this emergency session, but somehow they had arrived at exactly the right moment. Admiral Chen, Vortak said, clearly flustered. This is a closed session of the Federation Council. I know, Chen replied cheerfully. We were in the neighborhood and thought we might be able to help clear up some confusion. She approached the central podium with the same confident ease she had shown during humanity's first contact presentation. We've been monitoring Federation communications, sorry about that, but we're fast learners. And we understand there are some concerns about human expansion patterns. Concerns? Admiral Zekthara's scales rippled with agitation. Your species has been classified as a planetary-scale threat to galactic stability. That seems a bit dramatic, Dr. Martinez said, consulting his datapad. We're just trying to make a living. Some of those worlds you classified as uninhabitable had really excellent mineral deposits. You've domesticated creatures that destroyed our most advanced military units, Delegate Vrexte accused. Well, they weren't really trying to destroy anything, Colonel Williams explained. Most of them were just territorial or scared. Once we figured out what they needed to feel safe, they became quite reasonable. Council President Vortak found his voice. Admiral Chen, the Federation database has classified your entire species as a single apex predator entity. How do you respond to that assessment? Chen considered this for a moment. I suppose that's technically accurate if you think about it the right way. We are all part of the same ecosystem. Earth taught us that everything is connected. Predators, prey, plants, microorganisms, weather patterns, geological processes. You can't optimize for one part without considering the whole system. And now you're applying that philosophy to the entire galaxy, Karleth observed. Not applying, Chen corrected. Sharing. Every world we've colonized has become more productive, more stable, and more welcoming to other species. We're not trying to dominate anything. We're trying to make everything work better. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. If I may, honored delegates, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about human motivations. We're not expansionist in the traditional sense. We're gardeners. Gardeners? Vortak asked weakly. We see potential everywhere, Martinez explained. A world full of acid-spitting plants? Perfect for chemical processing. Storm beasts that generate lightning? Natural power grid? Hive mind parasites? Biological internet. We don't see threats or obstacles. We see opportunities for improvement. And you bring everyone along for the ride, Kethavar said, speaking for the first time during the session. Of course, Chen said, as if this were the most obvious thing in the universe. What's the point of improving something if you can't share it? The chamber erupted in a dozen conversations as delegates conferred with their advisors. The humans waited patiently, apparently unconcerned by the chaos their presence had created. Finally, Vortok called for order. The council will recess for deliberation. We will reconvene in 6 hours to announce our decision regarding humanity's status within the Federation. As the delegates filed out, Kethvar approached the human delegation. Admiral, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you realize what you're doing? The scope of the changes you're creating? Chen considered this seriously. We're doing what humans have always done. We find a place that's trying to kill us, figure out how to survive there, make friends with the local dangers, and build something better than what was there before. It's worked pretty well for us so far. But you're changing the entire galaxy. The galaxy was mostly empty and hostile before we got here, Dr. Martinez pointed out. Now it's becoming more full and less hostile. That seems like an improvement. 6 hours later, the Federation Council reconvened. The chamber was tense with anticipation as Vortok took his position at the central podium. After extensive deliberation, he announced, the Federation Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's status. He paused, looking out at the assembly. We have decided to classify humans as a beneficial symbiotic species and to establish the Human Integration Protocol. The chamber buzzed with reaction. Admiral Chen smiled. What does that mean exactly? It means, Vortok said with what might have been relief, that we're going to stop trying to understand what you're doing and start trying to learn how to do it ourselves. Director Karleth stepped forward. The protocol establishes joint Human Federation teams for the development of previously uninhabitable worlds. Human colonists will be paired with specialists from other species to accelerate the adaptation process and share the benefits more broadly. In other words, Admiral Zekthara added, sounding slightly dazed, if you can't beat them, join them. As the session concluded and delegates began discussing implementation details, Kethvar found himself thinking about his original survey of Earth.